Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I am here with my buddy Teddy, who's snoozing away behind me, to talk about the winner of the 2025 Booker Prize, which was announced about an hour ago as I'm filming this. I was not able to watch the ceremony live. I had to catch up to it because where I am in the world, it's the middle of a workday, so I got caught up doing work stuff. But I did catch up to the actual announcement of the prize, and I watched the winner's speech. The winner of the 2025 Booker Prize was Flesh by David Zaloy. This is one of the books that I read. I don't typically read my way through a long list, but for whatever reason, I got excited enough about the Booker Prize this year that I dove in and read several of the books. The problem is I didn't really like any of them, so I stopped working my way through and I DNF'd one of them. So I just didn't feel compelled to read my way further. There are some books I would still like to catch up to at some point, but I'm not feeling any sense of urgency. So what I will say is, of the books that I did read from the long list, I updated a ranking every time that I finished one. And Flesh is the one that I liked the most. So I feel happy in that regard. Like, at least of the books that I read, the one that I liked the most is the one that ended up winning. But you know, we're still sort of grading on a curve, I guess. I didn't really enjoy the book. I didn't get much out of it that means I will be thinking about it all that much. Like, since I have finished it, I have only thought of it when things about the Booker Prize and its impending announcement came up. Otherwise, I haven't really thought about it. I haven't really thought about any of the books. So I'm having an off year with the Booker Prize. That is not to say that other people won't be thrilled by this announcement or that they haven't been thrilled with the long list, but that has been my experience for sure. If you are unfamiliar, here is how the Booker website announces or describes the book Flesh. Written in spare prose and spanning decades, from a Hungarian housing estate to the mansions of London's rich elite, Flesh is a propulsive novel centered on an emotionally detached man who is unraveled by a series of events beyond his grasp. The novel is the sixth work of fiction by David Zaloy, who was previously shortlisted for the Booker in 2016. The book that he was shortlisted for at that time was called All That Man Is. I have not read it. I've heard mixed things about it. And to be fair, I've also heard mixed things about Flesh. I think the most interesting thing about the book is that sense of detachment that our protagonist has, but it also makes it a difficult book to really embrace, at least for me, because I never felt like I got very close to him at all. His name is Istvan. And I never really felt like I got to know him. And I know that's the point, but it made me sort of struggle. And I don't really think the book came to enough of a conclusion where I felt like, okay, I can enjoy the ride that I took with Istvan through this. So that's where I feel a little bit stuck. As I said, it is my favorite of the books that I did read. The other books that I read were The Land in Winter, Audition, and The South. I DNF'd The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny, and part of my disappointment with the Booker as a whole this year is that the two books that I was most excited about from the long list were The South and The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny. And when I did my ranking of the books that I have read, The South is the book that I put last. I feel like that book is, to me, like a nothing burger. I don't feel like I got much of anything out of it. It feels like I have a hard time even imagining that it's the setup for a series of books that will be published by Tashaw, because nothing ultimately happens. It feels like it is sort of setting up action for other books that will be coming in the series, but I don't feel compelled to read those other books or to continue the story that is told in The South, if that makes any sense. And then I DNF'd The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny. And part of that is because of how long the book is. Like, I wasn't enjoying Audition by Katie Kitamura, but because it is so short, I was able to power through it. Because I really wasn't enjoying The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny, and the book is so long, I just couldn't muster up the energy to force my way through it or to keep at it and see if it was something that would have a payoff at the end. Maybe it does. I will probably never know at this point. So I've been having an off year with the Booker, as I said. I have a whole review of Flesh by David Zaloy. I will link that down below. I will link the reviews of the other books that I actually finished. I did not do a review of The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny because I didn't finish it. I don't feel qualified to really render an opinion on the trajectory of that book because I got far enough that I could consider it something that I was reading. I did not get far enough to really fully render an opinion. So all I can really tell you about that book is that I did not feel compelled to continue reading it, which is worth knowing, especially in a book that is as long as that. But I can't really say anything beyond that. So if you want my full opinions about Flesh or the other books, they'll be linked down below. So because I didn't quite enjoy Flesh, I also feel like I don't really have too much to say about it, but it does sort of venture into an interesting conversation about masculinity and expectations of masculinity and how those expectations can cause harm. Like Istvan was something of a sensitive boy when he was young, and experiences that he has over time cause him to pull away from the world, to withhold his emotions and hide away. He was very shy in the beginning as well. And he's someone who in many instances things happen to. He is not necessarily causing things to happen. And for many people, that might in and of itself be a deal breaker. I kind of find that interesting because it's an experience of the world that a lot of people have. You know, things happen to you and you roll with the punches or fall apart. And it's interesting to see how someone deals with the things that happen to them. I think the issue that I had with it was not feeling connected to Istvan and not feeling connected to the resolution when we finally get to the end. And it is interesting. I feel like you can't really talk about the twists and turns of the things that happen to him along the way without spoiling the content of the book. So I won't really do that. If you are encouraged to pick up this book, you may very well have a better experience of reading it than I did. And I don't want to take away from that, but I also want you to be able to flow along with the way the story unfolds and the way Istvan's life unfolds and the things that happen to him. At later dates, he does sort of make moves into creating something for himself or a life for himself, but he is still doing that not necessarily at the behest of someone else, but he is able to do that because of someone else. And again, I don't want to get into specifics, but he's a very passive character, which is the thing that can be infuriating, but also can be interesting. And I think the reason I ranked Flesh as my favorite of the books that I did read is because I did find the passive qualities of Istvan to be interesting, because it feels like if you had just left him alone, let him be the sensitive, shy young man that he was, it's interesting to think about what the trajectory of his life would have been and how it would have been different from where he ultimately does go, because he sort of has to conform to a world that expects him to be tough and expects him to be manly and masculine. And as someone who was a sensitive, shy boy growing up, I guess I can relate to that, especially since unlike Istvan, I did grow up gay on top of all that. So it felt like I was always falling short of an expectation that people and culture have had. And there is something very interesting and profound about that book. So although I didn't really love Flesh, although it isn't something that I feel that I will be thinking about very much in the future, there is something profound about it. So I actually do feel happy about this win, and I can celebrate it in my own way. I had an off year with the Booker, but I feel like they landed on a book that you are able to have interesting conversations about, and a book that has some interesting things to think about. I think part of my problem with all of the books that I ended up reading is that the authors don't really give you much to go on. There's a lot of room left for you, the reader, to decide what to make of what you have read. And I have varying levels of frustration with that based on the books that I have read. And again, I think Flesh is the most successful one to me that I read, because it at least gives you something to hang on to. Although the book itself never mentions like toxic masculinity or expectations on masculinity, I feel like a lot of that has been conversation around the book. It's not really in the book itself. It's things that other people have been saying about the book as they have read it and as they begin to talk about it, which is interesting, but then it's kind of frustrating to pick up the book and you don't actually get much that is pointed or specific about those topics. It's just sort of glancing around them like a pinball. It's sort of touching on an area and then moving away. And you have to ultimately decide what to make of this book, which can be a good experience. Again, maybe if I think Flesh was the last book that I read off of the Booker Longlist before I attempted the Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny, which was sort of my breaking point, where I took a break and said, I don't feel like I need to continue on this path right now. And maybe if I had read Flesh on its own or first, I might have felt different about it. But because I read it after The South, after Audition, after The Land in Winter, it felt like another book that just wasn't going to give me much. And it's not that I feel like I need to be spoon-fed information about a book or what the author wants to say, but I feel like it also has to say something. And I don't feel like these books really said much. They leave things too open to interpretation, I guess. So if I had to read one of the books that I read again, I would pick Flesh. I had predicted that The Land in Winter would win, just because it felt that that was maybe the book that would benefit the most from constant rereads, which Roddy Doyle actually made jokes about before he announced who the winner was. It seems that actually they all had just liked Flesh so much that they kept coming back to it. They kept talking about it. And he mentioned that people would even smile and sit up a little straighter when they were talking about Flesh, because they enjoyed returning to that world so much. I don't personally feel that, but I can sort of see it. And I'm okay. I predicted The Land in Winter because I thought it was the book that would benefit the most from rereads. But I guess if you're already in the world of Flesh and you feel compelled by it, rereads would be like returning to something that you love deeply. So yeah, it's hard to predict which way these things are going to go. And I do feel better that I had narrowed my prediction down to Flesh and The Land in Winter. So although I went in the wrong direction, I do feel like I was close. So, you can give me credit or you can not give me credit. I'm going to give myself a little bit of credit for that. In terms of the rest of the books that were on the long list, I do still want to catch up to Endling, which was on the long list but not the short list. I do still want to catch up to Love Forms, which was on the long list and not the short list. And a lot of people who follow along with my channel have said that they think Love Forms is more of a me book. So maybe I should have started with that one. But alas, I didn't. So it's one that I will have to catch up to. And I feel okay based on the reactions to Misinterpretation and The Rest of Our Lives, letting both of those go. I don't think I would get much out of reading those books. Sea Scraper is at the point where it is being published in the United States. I do have access to the audio of it, so I'm not going to hurry to read it, but I would like to catch up to it. And Flashlight by Susan Choi is a book that I feel compelled to catch up to just because it is one of the most critically acclaimed books of the year, at least in the United States, along with Audition by Katie Kitamura, which I have already read. So I feel compelled to read it simply because of that. And because I think there could be potential for it with the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, which will be announced next year, but is 4 books that were published this year. I think I'll pass on One Boat, although I have heard some good things about it. Universality is a book that never really appealed to me, and then based on the feedback I've seen from other people who read their way through the long list, I feel I'm just going to leave that alone. So that is where I'm thinking of going with the rest of the list, but there are so many other things I want to catch up to before the end of the year that I'm not going to seek these books out right now. Maybe before the end of the year, but I think the only one I feel a sense of urgency is Flashlight. And again, that's not based on my own desire to read Flashlight. It's based on feeling that this is a book a lot of people are talking about, and it might be going places, not with the Booker Prize, but it might be going places with other, it's up for the National Book Award. And I should mention that because the National Book Award will be announcing its winners very soon. That will be on Wednesday, November 19th. They will announce all of the winners. They have multiple categories. I mostly stick to the National Book Award for fiction. This year, I have also been tracking the National Book Award for translated literature. So when I do my reaction to the National Book Award, I will mostly talk about the fiction winner, but I will also talk about translated literature. But there's also a nonfiction prize, a poetry prize, and a National Book Award for young people's literature. So I will talk about that when it is announced. Again, that will be Wednesday, November 19th. So lots of big stuff coming in the book world. Even though the Booker journey for 2025 is officially over, we have the National Book Award coming up. The year-end best of lists are going to start pouring in. Usually the New York Times Book Review releases its 100 notable books of the year leading up to Thanksgiving. And then not long after Thanksgiving, they traditionally announce their 10 best books of the year. I expect we'll be getting the 10 best books of the year from the Washington Post and a whole bunch of other places very soon. So the Booker journey has ended, but there is still a lot more to come. And I will once again say I had an off year with the Booker for myself, but I am excited about these other prizes and best of lists. And I can't wait to talk about them with you as they happen. So I don't think I have too much else to say about Flesh. As I said, I have a review. You can check it out in the description box down below. I'll have a link there. I talk about Flesh more in depth there. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. And I would love to hear what you think of the 2025 Booker Prize. Are you excited? Are you thrilled? Are you happy for Flesh? Was there another book that you would have liked to see win, whether that be from the shortlist or the long list, or even something that didn't make it onto the long list at all? Let me know all of that in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.